Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The motion before us, colleagues, today is a proposal to update the Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protections Ordinance allowable rental increases. And let me start by thanking the CEO and DCBA for putting together your March 2024 report back that included analyses and recommendations regarding the current rental increase formula. Let me just start by very briefly summarizing what the goal of the motion is, what the motion actually does as it's been presented. It extends the current temporary cap of 4% for units covered under the Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protections Ordinance to December 31st, 2024. It provides a new formula for rent increases to take effect January 1, 2025, 60% of average CPI rental increase cap of 3% unless otherwise determined by DCBA. It defines small property owners and allows a rental increase cap of 4% for small property owners unless otherwise determined by DCBA. For luxury units, it allows a rental increase cap of 5% unless otherwise determined by DCBA, inclusive of the luxury unit definition included in the current RSTPO. It adds a tool in the rental registry to begin to proactively identify corporate ownership of rental units. It instructs DCBA to provide a report back by March of 2026 to review and assess RSTPO, including looking at fair return cases and provide any recommendations to adjust the formula pass-throughs and streamlined application processes. The small property owner definition is meant to capture true mom-and-pop landlords, especially in our district, for many of whom are Black and brown and have either inherited property or invested in property as a means of creating generational wealth as part of their retirement plan. There are a couple of changes in a reading amendment I want to make based on additional input we've received. So number one, in Directive 3, Section B, subsection 2, as amended, it should read, quote, has an ownership interest or beneficial interest in or controls only one rental property with no more than 10 rental units. In Directive 4, as amended, we will add the following language, quote, if a registrant meets the small property owner requirements under Section 3 sub B and wishes to utilize the additional increase, they must include in their rental increase notice to tenants a statement advising tenants that they meet the small property owner requirements outlined in 3 sub B. The report shares 6 options for updating the rental increase formula, and I just want to remind us all that the Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protections Ordinance was, I think, originally passed in 2018. It was stalled in 2020. The increases were stalled in 2020 because of COVID. So we're working to update the policy that passed in 2018. Again, this motion proposes that the board update the rent increase formula using option 4 of the report back. 60% of the average consumer price index with a rental increase cap of 3%, with a 4% cap for small property owners and 5% cap for luxury units. This option provides much needed housing stability for tenants, while providing some additional allowance for small property owners and luxury apartment owners. 109,000 rental households call unincorporated LA County home, which is about 40% of total households. I've heard some concerns expressed that the motion creates a tiered system for rental protections and allowable increases. Well, the reality is a tiered system already exists. For example, the state policy that passed recently created a cap of 10%. So though it would be ideal to have one to minimize confusion, the reality is because of state law and each jurisdiction is responsible for tenant protections, we already have a multi-tiered system. The median income for renters in unincorporated areas is about $61,000, with approximately a third of them earning less than $35,000 annually. Of the units fully regulated by the Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protections Ordinance, most of the units are located in East and South Los Angeles. About 38% of all units are in the second district and 33% are in the first district. So I'd like to acknowledge that much of the information we have for properties in unincorporated areas is based on the LA County Rent Registry. And we know that this is incomplete data. However, this is the data we currently have until all property owners fully comply with their registration data, and I hope they will do that. The criteria for, quote, small property owner in this motion is meant to provide parameters for the property owners who are not corporate landlords to utilize, if they wish, the up to 4%. These parameters are intended to be in place while the board receives the report from the Department of Economic Opportunity for a countywide definition of small property owner. This motion is also an important step in beginning to identify corporate ownership of rental units in LA County through a self-certification process. Until we can push for more complete data on natural ownership of properties so we can understand who truly owns our county's rental stock. As we are contemplating a formula change today, I hope that we consider the looming state budget cuts that will impact safety net programs, including housing support for seniors, our foster youth and families. In addition to that, we all know that costs have gone up for everybody. It does not take another report for us to know that insurance cost increases are astronomical across the state, particularly here in LA County. And we also know that double-digit rental increases for tenants are untenable and lead to increased houselessness. So I believe this motion would update the RSTPO with a balanced rent increase formula, informed by data in the March report and the current reality of tough budget years ahead for the state that will impact our county unincorporated tenants as well as small property owners. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to start by asking several of our panel members here a couple of questions, if I may. So for DCBA, if you could refresh us on what qualifies a unit as fully covered for the RSTPO.
Yes, good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Supervisor, for the question. Rafael Carvajal, the Director of the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. So our RSTPO under 8.52 identifies two qualifiers for covered units. One is our fully covered units, which are our pre-1975 rental units, which are subject to rent stabilization and tenant protections. This is what we colloquially know as rent control.
Right.
It also identifies partially covered units, which are not rent restricted, but do extend our eviction protections, such as just cause requirements for those.
Based on what you received through your call center in cases for Stay Housed LA, what are some of the top reasons tenants are being evicted? And how would an up to 8% cap impact those calls?
Great. First, I have to apologize. I have to correct myself. I said 1975. I was thinking of DCBA's 50th birthday.
Oh.
We were established in 1975. It's actually pre-1995 units. So great question. Yes, we're going to hit 50 years old.
I was just thinking 1975 was 50 years ago?
Almost, next year.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
The majority of the calls that we do receive, both through our tenant protections hotline and for our partners at our State House program, are for tenants that can no longer afford their rent.
Mm-hmm. And so how would an up to 8% cap impact those calls, you think?
It would increase the calls, and it would definitely have an impact knowing and realizing the actual cost. We've seen inflation, we've seen the true cost of everything going up. You go to the grocery store, you see milk, diapers, everything is increasing. So it does have an impact on everybody.
The board, through previous motions, has directed Department of Economic Opportunity to implement programs supporting small property owners. What additional work and or collaboration do you think can be done to advance those programs? And therefore address the consideration that we're outlining in option 4, which is what this motion is based on, option 4 in your report.
Well, our partners at HRNA did a great job with their report back, and in there they do call out some changes that we can make internally as a department without any additional direction from the board, which in particular is looking at our administrative processes to make sure that it's easier for landlords to apply for additional consideration on their fair return and rental adjustments. So we are actually onboarding our HR and in the process of working with HRNA to help us evaluate our administrative processes and make sure that they're efficient and responsive in that sense. We continue to work with our partners at DEO on the report back and putting together some recommendations to support our small landlords. But in the interim, we're in the process of finalizing a contract with our LA Regional Small Business Development Centers to stand up Landlord 101 and 102 workshops to provide guidance and assistance for our landlords and property owners to understand our RSTPO and how to navigate the challenges and potential pitfalls that they face. But in addition to that, it does open them up to the additional resources available to small businesses through the SBDCs. And then we continue to roll out our rental assistance program. So as that continues to go, we do want to come back and advocate that we continue to maintain an ongoing rental assistance program, because not only does that support our tenants, it also supports our landlords. And also in addition, we've been in some early conversations with our partners on hopefully establishing a property owner grant program that helps remediate habitability and deferred maintenance issues for vulnerable landlords, so that we could ensure that the habitability remains in place for those homes that our tenants are housed safely, and that those properties remain on the market.
I appreciate that. Those properties remain in the market. That's critical. I want to thank, as I wrap up, Madam Chair, I appreciate that the March 2024 report was developed in conjunction with the convening of 2 stakeholder roundtables to gather diverse ideas and insights about tenant and property owners in unincorporated LA County's needs, so I appreciate that. And just want to acknowledge that as a part of our effort to put this motion together, we've had numerous conversations with property owner advocates, including the apartment owners organizations, California Apartment Association, the Apartment Association of Greater LA, the Greater LA Realtor Association, the LA Chamber, tenants' rights advocates. Again, my goal always is to slow the tide of the corporatization of rental property ownership across LA County, because we know today when mom and pops lose their property for a variety of reasons, there are not mom and pop owners stepping up to make the purchases. It's corporate entities that are buying those properties. And when that happens, affordability goes out the window. It is making sure that our tenants still have access to affordable rent, and that mom and pop landlords are able to afford to maintain their property, not lose it, because they are the ones we are relying on to provide affordable rental units. We believe through lots of work and collaboration and negotiation with various stakeholders that this motion presents a balanced, fair perspective. With that, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I ask for an aye vote.